Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Hello and welcome to the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative technology for wildfire suppression and containment, which is a mouthful, especially on what is this, a Thursday? I don't know.
Thursday.
It feels like late on a Friday, like I've been working 70 hours already. I've got Michelle Freese with us, and Michelle is very important role in wildfire. She works for Bridger Aerospace, and she is the flight operations person there who figures out how are they going to get all the airplanes where they're supposed to go and not crash into each other, and hopefully along the way put down some fire, protect some structures. Welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what your job is. It's probably not exactly what I described.
A little bit.
All right.
It was a new job last year, so now that I'm a year into that role, I feel like I've maybe gotten it figured out. So my main role there is a lead scheduler. So I do the schedule for the scooper pilots.
Okay. What's a super pilot?
The scooper pilots, the super scoopers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I help kind of manage the crewing for that. It kind of can get hairy when people get sick, people get injured. We're always kind of swapping in crews. So we have about 28 pilots. So I manage their schedules between 6 aircraft.
And are pilots, what kind of people are they to manage?
They're actually, I think they're wonderful. They're fun. There's definitely some days where you're like biting your teeth, but I think that's normal. I would say just based off of my previous years working with other people, they're the easiest people to work with.
Wow, great.
So I've had some experience, and I'm sure we'll get to that later, but I've just worked with pilots in the past, and I have found out that my personality matches most with pilots. So I feel like they just kind of feel like friends, and it's easy. So I have no complaints there.
And tell me about the mission when you send these pilots off to do something. How do you define what they're being sent to do?
I mean, Bridger's very
wildfire scenario.
Yeah, so really just protecting property and saving lives is all, Bridger's all about that. That's why I was drawn to Bridger. I kind of just fell into wildfire randomly, which is hilarious. Really, it's kind of full circle for me now, but I was thinking about it earlier, and my parents used to own a garbage company in Oregon, and so that was like landfill, outhouses. So I'm from Eastern Oregon, huge wildfire over there. It's always a problem. So the Forest Service would hire the garbage company to come and pump their shower water and for their camps.
Okay.
So when I was little, I would go with my parents, and I've just always had a huge respect for the ground firefighters. And I remember, I had been like 12, but it looks like there's a bunch of heroes walking around. They just, their faces are black. They're just scarfing down food, and we're just there to pump the toilets and the showers and give them clean water. But that's kind of, I've always thought about it. I have a lot of friends who have done ground firefighting and have a lot of respect for them. So I went to college for volleyball and basketball. So that was kind of my life path. I was always wanting to be a ground firefighter, but my life just went a different way from that. And then after school, just started working, and then I went to Overwatch Imaging in Hood River.
Okay.
And so I got hired there as an office manager. So, that was amazing. I didn't really know what they did there until I got hired. So I had some really great mentors, and they allowed me to get on a flight for NIROPS. So that's how I went into being a flight ops.
And then you were hooked. Huh?
Yeah, the aerial imaging was pretty incredible. So I spent a summer doing NIROPS and kind of flying around the country. So that was really awesome, and kind of brought me into Bridger, and it's just a full circle now.
That's a cool career so far.
Yeah.
But what do you see going forward?
Definitely not changing careers, that's for sure.
Right.
It's exciting, but most importantly, it's very meaningful work. And I think I've felt that the most working at Bridger. I work with some incredible, everyone's just highly motivated there and they care. So
And you've been at Bridger for how long now?
for a year this week.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Congratulations on your work anniversary.
thank you.
So, okay, so you've been there for a year. So if we were to compare now to a year ago, do you feel like even in that short amount of time, there's been a change in the demand and the strategies? And what are you seeing as a trend?
Yeah. As a trend, I think the California fires really opened up the country's eyes that it's not when it's going to start. Now it's kind of an all year thing. So for me, when I started at Bridger, it's planning for the summer. And now I'm planning for the entire year. So that's the change that, in the last year, it's crazy how much has changed into that. So I think going forward, because of all the wildfires happening so early on in the season, I mean, this is the earliest season we've ever had. So that's a big change and it's requires a lot more people. And so, yeah, I just don't think it's going to shut off. And that's the unfortunate part. But I'm thankful that we have Bridger and a great um, firefighting crew that, we're going to be around. So as long as there's a fire, we'll be available.
Well, how much fire can you handle at once?
That's a good question. So we have 6 scoopers. In air attack, obviously we have the eyes in the sky, but for water bombing and putting out fires, we have 6. So they go in pairings usually. So some fires, we'll have multiple aircraft on it, but how many we can put out at once, I don't know if I can answer that.
So do
Just
you think that, as I mean, you said there's been, even in the last 12 months, an increase in the length of the season.
yeah.
Probably, are you noticing also, changes in the intensity, frequency
Yeah,
of the fires?
the hard part with having aircraft available all year is they have to go through their maintenance every year. So I think we're trying to figure out, how do you go through winter maintenance but still have aircraft available?
And
So,
how long does that maintenance take?
it can take anywhere from a couple months to longer, just depending if there's any issues, which usually there's not. But it's just, weird things happen and little things happen, and it's hard, could be about getting a part or whatever. But that's the solution we're trying to figure out right now is how do we get a schedule with maintenance and pilots to where we can be called on, any point of the year.
And what's your fleet size right now?
So let's see, we have 6 scoopers and then we have 6 PC-12s, I believe. We just got another one, and then 4 Kodiaks. We just sold some, and I actually didn't work with AirTac much last year, but this year I am. So, excuse me. So what that would be total?
16.
Like it's something I should know.
That's
But yeah,
I used all my fingers
I was
and I
gonna
was able
say
to count 6
counting,
and 6
but
and 4. Okay, got it.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so 6. So do you anticipate that if fires keep doing what they're doing, you could end up needing 30, 40, 50 aircraft?
yeah, that sounds crazy, but I think that's that's the goal. Bridger's goal is just to protect, and I think it's a very inspiring company to be at because Bridger has goals, but they're very good at getting to their goals. And so I think that is the goal. I don't know how many years that will take, but Bridger keeps growing and growing and growing. And even in the last year, I just can't believe how much it's changed. So, who knows in 10 years how many aircraft we'll have, but I know that it's growing and there's conversations of it growing. So
And what are the physical, flight restrictions on when you can and cannot fly? Because I know in LA, when the winds hit 30 to 35 miles an hour, they ground all the aerial assets.
yeah, I mean, wind is a huge, huge issue with that. really, I'm trying to think, like, obviously in a snowstorm, we don't take off, but if it's fire season, wind is just a huge problem about that. I think water conditions can affect if we can scoop or not. So I haven't really been around where we've been grounded due to weather a lot. We were grounded due to weather in Oklahoma previously. The wind, it was super, super windy. But other than that, in my 1 year, I haven't experienced extreme weather.
Okay. And it seems like there's a big difference, right, with these types of civilian crafts versus some of the other craft. I can't see a situation where, some country is attacking the United States and we have to go bomb them. Like, oh wait, call back the bombers. The winds
Yeah,
just got to 30 miles an hour. Like,
yeah, exactly.
right. I don't think that's going to be a factor,
Yeah,
when we're sending in military planes. And I wonder why we're stuck with such weather vulnerable aircraft when
yeah,
it comes to
exactly.
actually protecting cities that are, you know, being burned up
Yeah,
versus the theoretical threat of some other country.
I mean, they do fly in some pretty crazy conditions, and I've seen them drop on water where I'm like, "Wow!" I would be scared flying the plane. So I got to spend
Sure.
time with them in Kingman actually about 3 weeks ago now, and pick their brains, and it's a pretty intense job. I have a lot of respect for them. You know, they fly for upwards of 8 hours a day, and it's like you got to stay sharp. And the paper requirements, even, it's just a lot of brain work, and it's really a commitment that they have to communities and their families. A lot of these pilots are missing the entire summers with their kids. One of the pilots had been home once in 9 years for his wife, their anniversary, and I'm
Oh
just
my
like,
goodness.
people see them on TV, and we all like, oh, the scooper pilots are amazing, but it's been a really great opportunity to get to know them and see them as people.
Yeah.
And I think they're just as exhausted as it looks. So I have a lot of respect for them. Wildfire is like a big, beautiful disaster to me. I've been in the sky at 30,000 feet, and it looks like the flames are going to touch the plane. And you just realize, just how devastating it is. And of course it is. It's wildfire, but the people that come with wildfire is pretty incredible. There's really good people in this industry, and I think that's why I'm like, can't change to another type of job. It's just it feels like a family, and a lot of devastating things happen, but the people are what keep everyone together.
Yeah.
And kind of Bridger's always reminding us of why we're doing this, even when it gets really tough. So
And have you noticed, besides dedication to, saving lives and property, are there other personality traits that you see in the pilots that you
yeah,
kind of comment
a
on
lot
at
of
all?
them are from the military. So I think a lot of them are just built to serve. Same with Bridger, a lot of our mechanics. I mean, really, in every department, I would say there's someone from the military. And there's just a lot of leaders there that I would say I've recognized. So it's pretty cool if you get to spend time with them. There's definitely a very special camaraderie there. And I think it's super attractive. And I think that's a big reason Bridger's getting really popular. Tim Sheehy was a great leader. And I think that brought a lot, of publicity to Bridger in a positive way. So yeah, it's great. And it's fun. I love airplanes. So I think some days I forget how lucky I am. Then I go out in the hangar and there's 6 beautiful scoopers, it's cool. And then you take someone for a tour and they're like, I can't believe you see this every day. So it's a fun reminder. But
That's great. And do you think that there are technological challenges, in terms of being able to soup up your capabilities beyond just adding craft, but modifications that we're going to see to the craft?
yeah, I think my biggest thing I realized this year, is like everything is through the government. So I just think there's new regulations and hoops to jump in. And I feel like Bridger's done a really great job at jumping through all those hoops. It's pretty incredible. We have scoopers to begin with. And that was a really big hoop for Bridger to jump through. So the fact that they're flying today is pretty incredible. I think the scoopers are very hard to get. So that's another problem with getting more aircraft is we can't really get them.
Who makes them? What's the supply chain look like for you?
I'm not sure who makes them. I know that they're out of, to company out of the country, but there's such high demand for them. So I believe the 515s are being made right now. And I think there's like a huge whopping waiting list for those. So 215s aren't being made anymore. So there's just a low stock of them. And so I'm sure you saw on our LinkedIn post of the new aircraft that we're supposed to get in 2028. So that
2028. Wow.
Yeah. So that'll be a long ways to get there. But I think if we get there, that will make a huge dent. And obviously we can spread out all across the country at that point. So.
And when you look at fire, looking at a satellite map or wherever you're drawing your data, local sensors, etc. How do you divvy up? Okay, this part of it is a Bridger fightable part, and this part here is a ground troops or a something else. How do you decide where you're going to deploy your aerial assets?
Okay, so yeah, it's mostly all government contracts. So we're kind of there for the government, and they call us and give us an order of where to go. So where we go is not really up to us.
Okay.
So that's
and if it were up to you, I'm trying to find a diplomatic way for you to answer this. If it were up to you, would you be going to the same places at the same time?
That's such a hard question to answer personally, just because I've never thought about that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some fires have 4 scoopers on them, some have 2. So I think really the most, life-threatening when the winds are booming and flames are, just going through, that's when we would have the most aircraft on them. I don't know if that really answers it, but I think the government is good about placing them where they need to go.
Okay.
And we're more of just an emergency response team.
You're a responder. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I just wondered if the government, instead of saying bring 3 of these and put them here, bring 8 of those, and put them there, yeah. If they just said, Michelle, get this fire out to make sure that these assets don't burn.
Yeah. So my job is
how would your team go about it?
So that's not really my department.
Okay.
That would be our contract specialist job. She divvies out all that stuff. I kind of just make sure there's people there to crew. And I get the aircraft ready before it goes out. Kind of lots of small things, but that's a conversation I've never had before with them. So they go out in 2 pairs. So they
2 pairs of what? 2 pairs.
So we have 6 scoopers, and the scoopers go out in pairs. They don't ever fly like solo, really.
Okay.
So they go 2 at a time.
The buddy system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So they're more effective that way. So yeah, I mean, they can send out in multiple areas in 3 different pairs, but yeah.
And what's the crew size on a scooper?
It's just two pilots. There's a captain and a co-pilot.
Okay. And do you send, 1 pair of pilots per aircraft, which would get them through 1 operational shift, or is there a second shift?
They're 12 days on, 12 days off.
12 on, 12 off.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're able to work the whole operational shift, so there's not like a morning shift and a night shift?
Yeah, we can go to a base and we can sit. They might not need us, but we're on contract, so we're obligated to be there. Or there's days where they're working there. We can only fly for 8 hours a day.
8 hours, okay.
That's their limit. So.
And that's the pilot limit, not the aircraft limit, is that right?
That's the pilot limit. The aircraft can fly up to 4 hours before it needs refueled.
Up to 4 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So some crazy fires, they're working, all day.
All day, 8 hours.
And there's some days, where they might not fly at all.
Okay.
So it just kind of depends on the severity of how bad we're needed. But a lot of times we'll sit on contracts, for longer than a month. So
I see. Because if they call you in at 6 a.m., you've got to stop, by 2 p.m. or what happens then?
Yeah.
Do you send another crew so that they can
No,
work from 2 to 8, or they're
nope.
just grounded?
So they're just, yeah, in the pairs, they're just grounded. So, I mean, we could go out for 2 hours and put a dent in, and then, you can spread out your 8 hours throughout the day. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
straight.
I see.
So, yeah.
All right, that helps.
Yeah, it does. And I think conditions, the weather, sometimes it could be horrible. So they go back and then they can go back out. So I think there's a 14-hour period where they have to do their work.
I see.
And
And
so,
what's the ratio of like people who are flying to support crew?
oh,
Engineers and other folks who keep
like
the planes flying and keep the scoop
maintenance.
scooping and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a huge maintenance team. So we have an MRU that follows the plane everywhere it goes. So we'll have a crew on the ground. If something happens with the plane, and then they just get it back up, as soon as possible.
That
So
must be a lot of pressure on them.
yeah. So I'm trying to think of how many they crew for that. At least a handful, I believe. Again, I'm like, it's not my direct department of scheduling, so I'm like, I'm not actually sure. There might be 4 at a time.
Okay.
And then there's a driver. So there's always a driver around. But yeah, for the 2 planes, there'll be 4 pilots. And so then at the 12 days, we'll get 4 new crew members.
Okay. When did Bridger start? Do you know?
I believe in 2014.
Relatively new.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we just went public within the last 2 years. So I know that's been a big change for the
Well,
people
that's
that have
huge.
been there for, the whole since 2014.
Yeah. And what impact do you think going public had on their capability?
I think good and bad, I just think it's not a secret. People the stock prices, now everybody can see them, and I think that can affect things. And I think during the election of Tim, Bridger was attacked in a negative way, so that didn't really help. But at the same time, it's great to go public and get more funding to, get Bridger working and have more aircraft. It's a big scale that it works on, so it makes sense that it went public.
Sure. It just means that, in an industry where maybe long-term thinking might be the best strategy, now you're forced into quarterly thinking.
Yes.
Oh, how's our third quarter earnings? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I think for the people that have been there for a long time, they've seen so much change, but I think at the end of the day, ultimately it's all been positive. So
Sure.
yeah,
Wow.
I'd say everyone's generally pretty happy to be at work every day. So it's a good environment to be in.
I bet. I mean, it's such a mission-focused company.
It is. Yeah. And, there's days where I have a tough day, and then I remember why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I like being there. So there's a purpose at the end of every day. So
Are there specific incidents, that you can recall or that you were involved in that gave you that this is why we do all the work feeling?
yeah, I would say before I got to Bridger, just because I got to experience it firsthand, it was pretty exciting being in the airplane and getting the call, on the way out and zipping our flight suits up and getting out on the plane. I think it is, I don't know. In Bridger, I'm not out in the field as I was prior. So that's how I can relate to it. And it's fun to get to be a part of that. And for me, running the schedule when things get tight and we need a crew, swapped immediately, it can be like pretty adrenaline rushing just because there's a lot of pressure. So, I guess a specific event, no, but with my prior experience of being a aerial imaging specialist, like I do miss being out in the field just because it's so crazy to see a wildfire when it's like at its biggest moment. It's pretty insane, and it changed my life. I think it'd be incredible if everybody got to see it from an aerial perspective. It's just unbelievable. So, and we're doing it for the people on the ground. And so I think another big reason of respect, everyone is doing it to protect the guys on the ground. And Bridger, I think everyone feels the same of our ground support comes first, and we care about their safety, and the property. But I kind of hate how like ground support doesn't get what's the word? I just don't think they get the commotion that they need.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones technically saving the property. We're just there to support them and keep them safe. So there's been, I'm sure you're aware, a lot of talk of them being underpaid, and
Absolutely.
I definitely back that up. And it makes me super sad because I'm just like, they're the reason, the houses are on the ground. We do so much, and we do help a bunch, but yeah, I think keeping them at the forefront of why we do this as well. So
Yeah. So you're saving their lives as well.
yeah, exactly. And they're putting the fires out, so we're there for them to help support. So
I think you're putting the fires out. They're doing the fuel deprivation part,
yes.
right?
Yeah, well, we're helping stop it, but
Yeah.
they're the ones sleeping on the ground every night, and at least we're staying in hotels. So
Yeah. No, there's no amount of money where I'd say they're overpaid.
yeah, exactly.
Right. There's
So.
seasonal work, bad conditions, low pay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect job for, post teenage boys, right?
Yeah, but
It's like the Boy Scout. We're going camping. We're gonna play with fire, right?
yeah,
But by the time you might be thinking about having a family or something, then it puts a whole new level of strain on you.
yeah, yeah, and just they're risking their lives as well, and
Yeah.
people lose their lives every year. So I mean,
And pilots as well, right?
yes, exactly. It's just a big family, and it's funny. I just think everyone in the fire world is connected in some weird way. It's like you meet someone and they're a part of fire, and then they're like, well, I know you already. So it's just everyone has a big respect for each other, and it's a small world, and it really does feel like a big family, and it's kind of where I feel like I fit. So it feels good.
And a functional family, right? Versus
Yeah.
the dysfunctional types, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you see going forward? Like how Wildfire is changing, how Bridger will adapt, and how how your role within Bridger will change as that all
Yeah.
unfolds.
I mean, I think going forward, it's not a lie. I do think we're going to see fires starting earlier and earlier every year. And I just think every department and every aspect around wildfire, I think everyone's having that question right now of how can we prepare? There's a lot of new technology coming out, which is really awesome. But for Bridger, I think it's trying to get more aircraft lined out, trying to, figure out how to get to that point so we can support, continue supporting the ground crew. I think my job is definitely going to have to grow. I'm the only flight ops coordinator right now. And if we get more aircraft and pilots, that's just way too many people for one person to manage. So I think Bridger's going to grow in all aspects, maintenance. Even if we got 3 more airplanes, it's a lot of new maintenance members to get.
Yeah.
So yeah, going forward, I just hope that all of the resources are prepared, and I'm a little nervous for going forward. Every year seems to get a little bit worse, and it's a little bit scary, just with the state of the world as well. So I hope and pray that everybody's prepared for it, and I can feel good going to bed at night that I know that I'm doing the best I can to help prepare for it and support Bridger in the ways that it needs to be. So
yeah, I mean, we know that on the larger scale, most of the world not prepared for it.
yeah, and that's unfortunate. And I think, people out with ranches, and they need to educate themselves if they're in a risk area. There's things that you can do for your own home, and, that you don't need to call someone to come help. So I think just educating everybody, and I'm like, the more it's on the news, listen how to protect your homes and your animals. And I just think it's a team effort for the whole country, and everyone's got to stay prepared. And I'm not trying to say that scare anybody, but it's no lie that it's becoming worse every year. So,
Right. And it looks like it's only going to get worse faster.
yeah. And I hope that the government continues to hire more ground support, because it sounds like they just let a bunch of them go. So,
right. They cut their pay and they're,
yeah, which is really sad. I'm like, those are the last people that this needs to happen to. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that gets fixed, because I'm like, who's gonna come out, when the call happens and they just let go a bunch of people. So that's my concerns. But going forward, we can really only handle what we can.
What's the geographic response area for Bridger?
Oh, we can go really anywhere that we get a contract. So
you go all over the world?
Yeah, they went to Canada. They were in Canada, I think, a few years ago on a contract there. We have 4 scoopers in Europe. And I know we're trying to figure out how to get those on contract, and what we're going to do with those. So, I mean, we can really operate anywhere. And most of our pilots are all Canadian.
Really?
Which is pretty funny. Yeah. There's only a handful that are Americans. So, but yeah, really, wherever we get the call, we'll probably make it happen. So,
do many of them play hockey?
I think previously, I know a lot of their kids play hockey. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I see. And who does the contracting?
Do you mean like at Bridger?
Yeah.
Her name's Kat Cooper. She's in charge of the contracting. So we get, private contracts that I can't talk about, but
right.
The big ones, the majority of it is government. So
I see.
There's a lot of opportunities for scoopers, which is really cool, that are not just related to fire. So,
and for a scooper to work, there's got to be a body of water to scoop from. Is that right?
Yep.
Or can they be filled up at a base or at an airport?
A body of water. So usually where we get called to, there's, a body of water that's, I think the longest one they did was it was like a 30-minute ferry to the lake.
Okay.
Is what one of the pilots told me. So that's a pretty far ferry for a fire nearby, I would say. So, but some of them, are right there. So
some of everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if the fire is more than half an hour or so away from a body of water, then it's not a great match for your capabilities.
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say that's probably a reason why they wouldn't contract us, but I would say
Sure.
typically we're pretty close just for quick response time. So,
and so you probably have a map of the country, and you know which areas are serviceable because of water bodies nearby, and which areas where it's going to be 4 hours to the nearest water body, and it's just not a good fit.
Our ops center, actually, they do a lot of lake planning throughout the year. So we do have a folder full of lakes from all over the country or bodies of water that we may operate in. So they're super good about researching and being prepared if we get the call. So
probably looks like one of those cellular coverage maps.
Yeah.
It can be here, we can't be there. Right.
Yeah. No, it's impressive. There's just the range and where we can go. I'd say the opportunities are endless, I would say, is what I've probably learned again in my short year, but it's been pretty incredible. I've learned a lot. So.
And who are your mentors?
So at Bridger, currently Tyler Miller is he's my supervisor right now. And then previously at Overwatch Imaging, which I believe she's, trying to think of where she's at. She's at a space company now. I just talked to her recently. Rachel McKay. I don't know if that rings a bell. And I saw you did an interview with Brittany Black.
Oh yeah.
We kind of crossed paths when I was at Overwatch, but
really,
yeah.
She's at Burnbot now. Right?
Yeah, I saw that, which is an awesome company. But yeah, Rachel was, I would say, my number one advocate for getting into Wildfire and supporter. So it's really awesome to have good mentors, but as a woman and having a woman mentor she's a pretty kick-ass lady. So
that's great.
He kind of, gave me the opportunity to even get into Wildfire. So that's been really great. So
with the importance of mentors like that, do you look forward to mentoring people into the industry yourself?
Yeah, I do. I don't think I answered going forward where I'd like to see myself at Bridger, but it's a great job and I hope to be there. I hope my career ends there. It's a place that I really, really respect and I do like being there every day. And I think it would be great to introduce these kind of jobs to young women and young kids. Because I think for me, I would have never saw myself in this position. And I just feel like I fell into it. But I think I wish I would have had someone when I was that age being like, hey, this is a career option for you.
What age would
So,
that be?
oh, I
Do
mean,
you
I
think
think high school would
people should be
probably
going
be
into
good.
schools and talking to, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade girls and saying,
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
I think
something
that
you
would
could
be
do?
awesome. I think high school would probably be like an ideal way to go, especially for the kids wanting to be ground support. A lot of our Bridger employees are all past wildfires, like fighters. So I think it does help if you're in the industry early, for sure.
Right.
I would say I got pretty lucky with my circumstance, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think there's really wonderful careers in wildfire. So I would say middle school and high school would be a great time to start talking about people about current
I
opportunities.
know in science careers, they say if a kid has not decided by eighth grade that they like science, they're not going into a science career. Nothing that happens in
Exactly.
high school is going to fix it.
It took me 28 years to figure out what I was wanted to do with my life. So,
Well, it
I'm
looks like
like,
you landed in such a great spot.
yeah. So that's what I'm like. I feel very lucky. I've always been drawn to wildfire just because it's, Eastern Oregon was always on fire. And I always had family and friends being firefighters. But kind of that's why it feels full circle to me. But it would be awesome to give kids a perspective young of the opportunities that are out there that you don't have to be on the ground either. So there's a lot of great support rules.
Can you fact check something for me?
Well,
I
hopefully.
I, I heard that there were 5 seasons in Oregon. It was winter, spring, summer, fall, and smoke.
Yep.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's a lot of red skies. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Montana too. Bozeman gets pretty smoky. We've been pretty lucky in the last 2 summers, but
And
hopefully.
does your proximity to Missoula and the fire lab there have any benefit to you?
I mean, not personally. I haven't really heard much about it. So no.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah,
Well, Bozeman's a pretty great place
yeah, it's been amazing.
if you're not there in the winter, right?
Yeah, it depends. I'm like, I've just had to force myself to fall in love with winter. The winters were pretty harsh in Oregon where I grew up. So I lived in Scottsdale for a couple of years and got my sunshine there, came back. And I do like my seasons. It's fun. I snowboard, so it's nice to get out.
That's great.
But yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't look like a snowboard behind either.
no. That just reminds me that I used to live near the coast. So
I see. All right. And then maybe one day you'll get back there on
yeah,
vacation. Huh?
exactly. Kept it just in case we go back to the beach anytime soon. So
That's great. Well, I love that you love what you're doing and that you have so much impact where you are and that you're, a role model of what women can go into if they want to, because, you got to do it. And a lot of people, your limitation is what you think is possible.
mhm.
So I really hope that you'll be able to influence more people going into that space.
Thank you. Me too. I'd say my biggest advice I can ever give is just always advocate for yourself. No one else is going to do it. Even if it feels too big, still push around and, you never know what you're going to get back. So always advocate for yourself. So
That is great advice, Michelle. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the Fire Break today.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and fascinating to learn about what you do. And boy, I guess being part of a big publicly held company is massive opportunities, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
push that company where you want to go. Michelle Fries from Bridger Aerospace. She's the director of flight operations,
Coordinator. Sorry.
coordinator of flight.
Yeah. Not
Okay, of
director.
flight ops. All right. Well, I hope that they're not too different descriptions. But I want to thank you so much for joining me, Michelle Fries from Bridger Aerospace. You have been listening to, or hopefully watching, because we're such good-looking people, the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Time Wild, by Time Weedle. Sleep is so important. I cannot stress the importance of it to mental function. And if I had gotten some sleep, I would have probably said, we're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Thanks so much for watching and listening. I'm Steve Wolf. We'll see you at the next one.